Hello YouTubers, welcome to part 10 of my Volvo FH12 build. I'm Colin and this is TamiyaTruckBuilding. I'm picking the pace up a little bit today people, covering stages 16 to 18. This will see completion of the rear axle and it mounted to the running frame. This is stage 16. And the first thing we've got to do is attach the rear leaf springs to the rear axle, which we're going to do with several long bolts, nuts, a couple of plastic parts, and we've also got to put some thread lock on them as well. The plastic parts are off the sprues, they are different either side of the spring. You'll see that on the diagram. And on the underside of the axle we have to fit one of two metal brackets, one each side, which are handed, and they are to facilitate the fixing of shock absorbers. According to the diagram, that's the one we want for the left side. So just hold that in place and check it. Two very long screws for this. 27mm long. So they have to pass through the bracket, the axle, both plastic parts and the spring. And then there will be a nut that drops into the plastic recess. But before we put that in place, a little drop of thread lock. Just do one at a time. Just give my finger over it for the moment. Won't need to be massively tight. There we go. Thread lock on the other side and the nut. And then we're going to repeat the process on the other side of the axle, fitting the opposite spring hanger. And the last thing we need to do is to fit spring hanger shackles to each of the springs so that we can connect them to the chassis. Two of these metal plates again they've got like a little indentation in the middle of them. I tend to mount those outwards so that they don't create any tightness with the springs, although in fairness I don't even think they're going to touch them. There's a collar through the middle and a locking nut on the outside. There we go, that's one done. Does look tight, because of the collar on the pin, it leaves the two shackles hanging freely. So I'm just going to repeat the process now on this side. On either side and the pin through the middle. Pin goes from the back so it faces with the nut outwards. Just do up the nut. And there we go. Job done. In stage 17 we're going to fit the axle and the springs to the chassis. You can see the parts that we need. This is pretty straightforward. It's a case of some screws, some collars, some washers, some distance pieces, which will allow them to be fitted quite firmly to the chassis but allow them to move. There's one of the collars there. I'm going to start with what would be the front of the vehicle. The collar on, the washer and the screw, and the screw goes into one of the plastic cross members. You may recall in one of the earlier stages we left one of the screws out and we put a nylock nut inside the plastic cross member. Well, that's what this screws into now, because it just drops straight through the chassis member and then screws into the nylock nut in the cross member. Just do this one up for you. There we go. We're now going to connect the rear end of the springs to the chassis. Very similar to the front, we've got collars and long screws and captive nuts that go on the inside. The hole that we're going to use is that one there, and the shackles will fit onto that with the pin and the spacer. Hopefully we'll be able to just assemble it outside of the chassis. Keep the pin flush and it should drop down and into the hole that we want. There we go. Just trying to find a way to hold it so I can show you. There is a moulded nut shape recess into the plastic, so the nut will drop into that. You don't need to hold the nut with a spanner or anything, or a wrench. and just do it up nice and tight. There we go. One side done. Okay, anybody notice that I've got two little washers left over? That's the beauty of taking all the parts out in the first place. You can have a double check. Looking back at the diagram, I've missed a washer on either side, one either side on the front hangers. No big deal to take it apart and put them in again, but it just goes to show you that even somebody who's looked at these diagrams hundreds of times as I have, you can miss things. There is in fact a washer, one either side of the spring. I've only put in one washer on the outside. There's a washer on the inside as well. So I'm just going to have to pull it apart, both sides, and pop them in. And the last of the three stages in this episode, stage 18, is pretty straightforward. It's just fitting the remaining two dampers, the rear dampers, which go on the back of the axle and connect to one of the chassis members. Move some parts out of the way. Hold the chassis in the direction and the way round that the illustration shows, so we can see where they go. Now, what would be the top of these shock absorbers, that's the pink end, go into two captive nuts that we fitted quite early on in the build process in the chassis member that's underneath. Just point to it. On the back of this particular plastic chassis member, you can just see there's two silver inserts which we put in. They would be very awkward to screw up, so Tamiya kindly give us holes in the rear chassis member that you can put a screwdriver through to be able to do them up. So these are a double. Turn around and do it this way because I'm right-handed. Sorry about that. Once I've got it in position, I'll turn it round so that you can see it. One either side at a diagonal, and the top end connects to those metal brackets that we fitted to the axle. There you can see the captive nuts on the back. Just put the other one in place now. Okay, they're both connected to the chassis member, and the top ends of them quite simply connect to the two metal brackets. These are flange nuts with serrated edge on the inside, so you don't need thread lock or anything like that. Once the screw and the collar are pushed through and tightened up, they'll grip onto the metal bracket without any problem at all. There we go, one in position. Sorry about earlier, I held it up too high and it was out of the range of the camera. I don't have a monitor in front of me, so it's difficult to know sometimes whether you're actually keeping it within the frame or not. I keep telling myself keep it low down, but I still hold it too high. That's the second one in place. You can pop the flange nut on the back and screw it up. There we go. I'll do this one back to front, left-handed, just so you can see it. Feels weird trying to use a screwdriver with the left hand, to me anyway. There we go. Just do the other one up. And that's it. That is stage 18 complete. You can see springs work and shock absorbers work. Good, pleased with that. That's it for this episode, YouTubers. Hope you enjoyed the video. Next time we start on the gearbox. Don't forget to hit the like button, and if you haven't already, subscribe to my channel. Bye for now.